My name is Judith Lane, 32, and I'd spent months pouring my soul into planning my sister's wedding in Knoxville, Tennessee. Picture this. I'm hauling boxes of decorations, sweating over table settings, and managing a buffet for 150 guests, my personal gift for her special day. But a week before the wedding, I overheard a conversation that turned everything on its head. My parents and sister were gathered in the living room, thinking I was out of earshot. They were scheming to dump the job of babysitting 12 kids on me during the ceremony and reception, without even asking. Me, the unpaid planner, suddenly reduced to a glorified babysitter. My blood boiled. They just assumed I'd fold like always, but not this time. I made a decision right then and there. With one quick call, I canceled the catering contract, tossed the decorations I'd spent weeks crafting, and booked myself a weekend at a boutique hotel downtown. On the wedding day, my phone lit up with a storm of calls. My sister's voice shrieked through the line, "Where are you?" I leaned back in my hotel suite, took a slow sip of coffee, and chuckled. "Don't wait for me," I said. "And don't wait for the buffet." What happened after that? Let's just say their perfect celebration turned into a hard-earned lesson they'll never forget. Stick around to hear how it all went down. Before we dive into my story, tell me what time it is where you are and which city you're watching from. I'd love to see how far my story has reached. For months, I poured every ounce of myself into planning Stacy's wedding, my sister's big moment. At 32, I'd built a name as an event designer in Knoxville, Tennessee, and this was my personal gift to her. Her special day was set in a public park surrounded by sprawling oaks and a white gazebo, perfect for exchanging vows. I spent weeks sketching seating layouts, picking linens, and sampling menus with caterers. My evenings blurred into phone calls, confirming floral arrangements, double-checking the buffet for 150 guests, and fine-tuning the playlist to match Stacy's style. I even hand-picked strands of fairy lights to drape across the reception space, already picturing her smile when she saw them. This wasn't just work. It was love, my way of showing up for my family. That Tuesday evening, I came home late, arms full of fabric swatches. The house was quiet, but voices drifted from the living room. I stopped by the stairs, not meaning to listen in, but my dad, George, said something that froze me in place. "Judith will handle the kids," he stated like it was already settled. My mom, Elizabeth, added, "She's great with them, and it'll save us hiring a sitter." Then Stacy laughed. "Yeah, she's always up for anything." 12 kids won't be a problem. 12 kids? My stomach nodded. They were talking about me babysitting a dozen children through the entire ceremony and reception, without even asking. I gripped the banister tighter as Mom continued. "She's already doing the decorations and catering. What's a few more hours?" Dad grunted. "It's not like she's got her own life to worry about." The words hit me like a slap. My parents and sister saw me as free labor, someone to pile responsibilities on just because I was dependable. All those late nights, all that effort, and they saw me as nothing more than their helper. I slipped upstairs, chest heavy with anger and hurt. In my room, I stared at the wedding binder. Pages of schedules, vendor contacts, my handwriting crammed in the margins. I had given everything to this, but to them, I was invisible. Just a tool to make their lives easier. I thought back to every family gathering where I cooked, cleaned, and organized out of love. But now it hit me, they didn't appreciate it. They expected it. I sat on my bed, their words echoing in my mind. Stacy's laugh stung the most. She was my sister, the one I'd comforted after her first breakup, the one I'd celebrated at every milestone. And now she was brushing me aside like I didn't matter. George and Elizabeth weren't any better. They'd always leaned on me. Dad calling when his computer crashed, Mom asking for errands whenever she was too busy. I'd done it all thinking that's what family was supposed to do. But this, planning a full wedding and babysitting a small army of kids without even a single please, that was a line crossed. I opened my laptop and pulled up the catering contract, my finger hovering over the email tab. Part of me wanted to storm downstairs and demand an explanation, but I knew exactly how that would go. Dad's dismissive wave, Mom's fake shock, Stacy's inevitable eye roll. No, words wouldn't fix this. They had made their plan without me, so I'd make mine without them. I wasn't just hurt. I was done being their doormat. My place in this family wasn't what I thought it was, and that truth burned. I needed to rethink everything, starting with that wedding. I needed to talk to someone who would truly understand, so I texted my best friend Carol, asking her to meet me at a coffee shop downtown. The place buzzed with life. Baristas steaming milk, couples chatting over lattes, but I barely noticed. I slid into a booth, wedding binder still tucked under my arm, the pages a painful reminder of everything I'd invested. Carol walked in, her usual bright smile fading when she saw my face. I spilled it all. How I'd spent months designing Stacy's wedding, from the gazebo setup to the buffet menu, only to overhear them plotting to make me a babysitter. They didn't even ask me, I said, my voice trembling. They just assumed I'd do it, like my time means nothing. Carol leaned in, her eyes sharp. That's not family, Judith. That's exploitation. You're not their hired help. Her words hit like ice water. She didn't sugarcoat a thing, just listened as I vented about Dad's casual dismissal, Mom's agreement, and Stacy's laugh that stung worst of all. You don't owe them anything, Carol said, stirring her coffee. So what are you going to do about it? That question sparked something inside me. I'd been stewing in anger, but suddenly I saw a way out. I'm not going, I said, the words surprising even me. I'm done with their wedding. Carol raised an eyebrow, then nodded slowly. Good. Make them feel it. I pulled out my phone and scrolled to the catering company's number. My hand trembled slightly as I hovered over the call button. This was it, no turning back. I dialed, heart pounding. Hi, this is Judith Lane, I told the manager. I need to cancel the buffet order for the Lane wedding this Saturday. All of it. He sounded confused, asked for a reason, but I kept it short. Personal circumstances, I said, hanging up before I could second-guess myself. Next, I called the decor vendor. The table settings, the fairy lights, the centerpieces, cancel everything, I told her. She tried to argue about deposits, but I cut her off. Send the invoice to George Lane, I said firmly. I wasn't paying for their mess. With every call, I felt lighter, like I was shedding the weight I'd carried too long. I wasn't just canceling services. I was reclaiming my self-respect. Carol watched, a small smile forming on her face. You're really doing this, she said softly. I nodded, feeling a rush of clarity. They had made their plan without me, so I was making mine without them. But I wasn't finished yet. Right there in that coffee shop, I opened my laptop and started searching for an escape for the weekend. Knoxville's boutique hotels filled the screen, and one caught my eye. A sleek downtown spot with a rooftop bar overlooking the Tennessee River. Perfect. I booked a suite for the weekend, my credit card confirmation chiming before I could change my mind. I pictured myself there, sipping a drink while Stacy and my parents scrambled. The image made me smirk, not out of cruelty, but because, for once, I was choosing me. Carol reached across the table and squeezed my hand. You're stronger than they think, she said. And I believed her. I felt it like a spark catching flame. I wasn't the pushover they always counted on. Back home, I packed a small bag, clothes, toiletries, my favorite book. No wedding binder this time. I glanced at my phone, half expecting a message from Stacy or Mom, but it stayed silent. They had no clue what was coming. I'd spent years jumping whenever they called, fixing every problem, thinking that's what family meant. But now, I saw the truth. It had been a one-sided deal, where I gave and they took. By Wednesday morning, I double-checked all the cancellations. The caterer confirmed the buffet was off. The decor vendor sent a curt email about the inconvenient timing. I didn't care. I called the hotel to confirm my reservation and even added a spa appointment for Saturday. Why not? I'd earned it. A few vendors emailed about last-minute wedding details, but I forwarded everyone to George. Let him handle it. I wasn't their safety net anymore. By Wednesday night, I felt calmer than I had in months. The wedding was just 3 days away, and I wouldn't be there. Stacy, George, and Elizabeth would have to face the chaos they created. I didn't know exactly how things would unfold, but I knew one thing. I was ready to let them deal with it. I turned off my phone, poured myself a glass of wine, and sank into the couch, feeling lighter than I had in years. For the first time, I wasn't planning someone else's big day. I was planning my own peace. Saturday morning, the wedding day, I woke to a golden sunrise over Knoxville. The boutique hotel suite was everything I'd hoped for. Crisp white sheets, floor-to-ceiling windows, and a breathtaking view of the Tennessee River shimmering in the light. For the first time in months, I wasn't rushing to fix someone else's crisis. No wedding binder, no vendor emails, no family barking orders, just me, wrapped in a plush robe with a cup of rooftop bar coffee in hand. I stepped onto the balcony, breathing in freedom itself. Stacy's wedding was happening across town at the park, but I was done being their backup plan. Today, I was choosing me. I settled into a lounge chair, flipping through a magazine when my phone buzzed. Stacy's name glowed on the screen. I let it ring, savoring the peace before answering. "Judith, where are you?" she shrieked, her voice trembling with panic. "The caterer's gone, the tables are empty, and the kids are running wild." Chaos echoed through the line, shouting, clattering dishes, someone yelling about napkins. I crossed my legs, leaning back. "Sounds like a mess, sis," I said coolly. "But you didn't ask for my help, remember? You just assumed I'd handle it." She stammered, "We need you here." "This is my wedding." I almost laughed. "You needed a babysitter and a free planner," I replied. "Find someone else." I hung up, my pulse racing, but my resolve was firm. 10 minutes later, George called. "Judith, this is unacceptable," he barked in full dad mode. "Get to the park right now and fix this." I pictured him, tie loosened, surrounded by panicking guests. "Fix it yourself, Dad," I said evenly. "You and Mom decided I was your errand girl without asking." "I'm not coming." He tried to argue, but I cut him off. "You made this mess. Deal with it." I ended the call, my hands trembling but steady at the same time. They had crossed the line for good. I wasn't budging. I took another slow sip of coffee, letting silence fill the room. The hotel felt like a sanctuary, soft jazz floating from the lobby, staff moving gracefully with polite smiles. I booked a massage for the afternoon, something I hadn't treated myself to in years. My phone buzzed again, text from Elizabeth, desperate and pleading. "Judith, please." I ignored them. Their panic wasn't my burden anymore. For once, I wasn't the one scrambling to rescue the day. I felt light, as if I'd shed years of obligation. Opening my laptop, I checked emails for a new client project, a corporate gala I'd recently pitched. Work felt good, grounding, a reminder that I had a life beyond their endless demands. Around noon, Carol texted, "Lunch?" She was in town covering a local festival for work. I invited her to the hotel's restaurant, a stylish space with exposed brick and craft cocktails. Over salads, we talked shop, her latest article, my upcoming gala proposal. "Heard the wedding's a disaster," she said casually, spearing a tomato. I shrugged. "They'll figure it out." Carol didn't pry, just nodded, and we dove back into creative brainstorming. It felt refreshing. No pity, no family drama. Just two professionals talking like normal adults. Meanwhile, my phone kept buzzing. Missed calls from Stacy, a voicemail from George, even a text from Mom saying, "This isn't you." "Judith." I deleted them all. Their words didn't sting anymore. They just sounded hollow. I imagined the park, guests wandering aimlessly, no food, no decor, children tearing through the gazebo. Stacy fuming in her white dress, George barking orders, Elizabeth plastering on fake smiles. I didn't feel guilty. They'd always assumed I'd bend to keep the peace. But I wasn't their safety net anymore. I headed to the spa and sank into the massage chair as the therapist worked out knots I didn't know existed. The room smelled of lavender, and for an hour I forgot the wedding even existed. My phone stayed off, tucked in my bag. I wasn't hiding. I was living. Later, I wandered through downtown Knoxville, ducking into a cozy bookstore to browse. I picked up a light-hearted novel and sat by the river with an iced tea in hand. The day finally felt like mine, not theirs. I wasn't just skipping a wedding. I was reclaiming what family meant to me. By evening, I was back at the hotel, sipping a cocktail on the rooftop bar. The city lights shimmered below and a calm strength settled over me. Stacy and George's calls had stopped, probably too busy dealing with the fallout. I didn't care how they were managing. I'd given them years of my time, energy, and love, and they'd tossed it aside. Today wasn't about revenge. It was about respecting myself. I wasn't going back to being their doormat. I finished my drink, ready for whatever came next. The next morning, my phone was flooded with messages, most from numbers I didn't recognize. Guests from Stacy's wedding, no doubt, caught in the chaos I'd left behind. I'd kept my phone off during the spa session, but now, back in my suite, I scrolled through them. Each text painted a picture of disaster at Knoxville Park. One stood out, from Pamela Russell, a friend of my mom's. "Judith, this wedding is a mess," she wrote. "No food, no decorations, kids everywhere. I don't blame you for staying away." I couldn't help but smirk, picturing Pamela, the no-nonsense mom of two, watching it all unravel. She'd always been blunt, and her message felt like quiet validation. "They should have respected you," she added. I didn't respond, but her support settled something deep inside me. I could imagine the park, bare tables, no buffet, a gazebo stripped of months of planning. Then a text came from my cousin Matthew. "I messed up, Judith," he wrote. "I went along with George's plan at first, but I told him off today." "He's furious," my eyebrows lifted. Matthew had been there when Stacy, George, and Elizabeth decided to stick me with babysitting 12 kids. He hadn't said a word then, but now he was taking a stand. "You did the right thing," he added. I typed a quick, "thanks," feeling a flicker of something I hadn't felt in days. Connection. Matthew standing up to Dad felt like a crack in their perfect facade, proof that someone finally understood. More updates came through Pamela's follow-up texts, each one more outrageous than the last. With no caterer, guests were left with nothing but a water station and stale chips from a nearby convenience store. The 12 unsupervised kids had turned the park into a circus. One knocked over a chair, another spilled juice on a guest's dress, while a group ran wild through the ceremony space. Stacy, in her pristine white gown, was apparently screaming at a vendor over the phone, trying to salvage what she could. I pictured her face, red, frantic, veil askew, as the perfect day she bragged about crumbled around her. George and Elizabeth weren't faring much better. Pamela said they'd scrambled to hire a last-minute caterer, a fast food joint that agreed to deliver sandwiches for 150 people. It cost them a fortune, roughly $3,000, based on George's heated phone call she overheard with the bank. The food arrived late, cold, and barely enough to go around. Guests grumbled, some slipping out early. Elizabeth tried to play hostess, offering hollow apologies, but Pamela said her smile looked forced, like she knew the day was a total bust. "Your parents are humiliated," Pamela texted. I leaned back, letting that sink in. They had counted on me to make everything flawless, but without me, their illusion collapsed. I didn't feel glee, just a quiet, satisfying calm. This wasn't about payback. It was about consequences. Stacy had laughed at my efforts, assuming I'd handle it all. George had barked orders like I worked for him. Elizabeth had stood by silently. Now they were paying for it, literally and emotionally. The guests leaving early must have been a brutal hit to Dad's pride. He cared more about appearances than anything. I could picture him pacing, tie undone, muttering that none of this would have happened if Judith had just shown up. But I hadn't, and that was the point. Matthew's second message confirmed it. "George blames me for not warning him you'd bail," he wrote. "I told him he should have asked you first." I could imagine the scene, Matthew, usually quiet, finally standing up to Dad's temper. Probably right there in front of guests, adding to the humiliation. I didn't reply this time. His choice to speak up was his own, but it showed just how far the fallout had spread. Their plan had imploded, and now they were turning on each other. Pamela sent one last text. "You're better off where you are." I nodded to myself, setting my phone aside. The hotel suite was peaceful, sunlight glinting off the river outside. I didn't need to be at the park to know the chaos was real. Stacy's perfect day lay in ruins, and George and Elizabeth were left cleaning up the wreckage they'd created. I'd spent years smoothing over their problems, but not this time. The wedding was their disaster to handle. 2 days later, I was sipping tea when the doorbell rang. I'd just returned to my Knoxville home, still unpacking from the hotel, the quiet freedom of the past few days lingering in my chest. Expecting a delivery, I peeked through the peephole, then froze. Stacy. Her face was pale, drained, no trace of the wedding day glow she'd once had. I opened the door, cup in hand, leaning against the frame. "What do you want, sis?" I asked flatly. She stepped in without waiting, heels clicking against my hardwood floors. "We need to talk," she said, her tone tight, a blend of exhaustion and stubborn pride. She stood in my living room, arms folded, still wearing the pearl earrings from her ruined wedding. "Yesterday was a disaster," she began. "Judith, you didn't show up and everything fell apart." I set my tea down and met her eyes. "Sounds like you had a rough day," I said coolly. She flinched, then sighed. "I'm sorry, okay? I didn't mean for it to go that way. We just thought you'd handle the kids because you're so good at everything." I laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. "Good at everything? You mean good at cleaning up your messes for free?" I stepped closer, keeping my tone steady. "You, George, and Elizabeth decided I'd be your babysitter and your planner, without even asking me." "That's not family, Stacy. That's disrespect." Her eyes widened. Maybe she hadn't expected me to stand my ground. "We didn't mean it like that," she stammered. "We were just stressed. We thought you'd want to help." I shook my head. "You didn't think about what I wanted. You assumed I'd fall in line, like always." Stacy's face crumpled and she tried again, her voice softening. "I'm your sister. We've always been there for each other. Can't we just move past this?" For a moment, her words tugged at old memories. Late-night talks, heartbreaks, all the times I'd been her shoulder to cry on. But that wasn't enough anymore. "You were there when it suited you," I said quietly. "But when I gave everything for your wedding, you laughed it off and piled more on me. I'm done being your safety net." She opened her mouth to protest, but I cut her off. "No, Stacy, you don't get to guilt me into fixing this. You made your choices. Now live with them." She stood there, hands twisting, eyes wet. "Mom and Dad are upset too," she whispered. "They're saying you ruined everything." I didn't blink. "They ruined it when they treated me like their errand girl. If they're upset, that's their problem, not mine." Stacy's eyes shimmered, but I stayed firm. I'd spent too many years swallowing my hurt for the sake of peace. "Not anymore. You should go," I said finally, nodding toward the door. She hesitated, then turned and left, her footsteps echoing until the door clicked shut. I sank into the couch. The silence was heavy but not uncomfortable. I'd stood my ground and it felt right. My phone rang, pulling me from my thoughts. "Aunt Beatrice." Her voice was warm but firm when I answered. "Judith, I heard what happened," she said. "I'm proud of you." Beatrice had always been the blunt one in the family, never afraid to call things as she saw them. "I was at the wedding," she continued. "It was a mess, and they deserved it. George and Elizabeth were out of line, and Stacy should have known better." Her words soothed something raw inside me. "Thanks, Beatrice," I said softly. "I just couldn't do it anymore." "You did the right thing," she said without hesitation. "They thought they could lean on you forever without giving back. You showed them they can't." We talked for a while, her describing the chaos I'd already heard about. Guests leaving early, George red-faced and shouting, Elizabeth near tears. But Beatrice didn't dwell on the drama. "Focus on you now," she said. "You've got a good head on your shoulders. Don't let them drag you back." I promised I wouldn't, and when we hung up, her support lingered in my chest like warmth after a storm. Stacy's visit hadn't shaken me. Her apologies came too late, her excuses too thin. George and Elizabeth's anger didn't faze me either. I'd given them my time, my energy, my loyalty, and they'd thrown it all away. Beatrice's call reminded me that not everyone saw me as a tool. I felt stronger, ready to close that chapter for good. A week after the wedding, I threw myself into building something new, my own event planning company. The idea had been simmering for months, sparked by the corporate gala pitch I'd sent before the wedding. I named it Lane Events, a nod to finding my own path. I rented a small office downtown with wide windows overlooking Market Square. My first clients were a local couple celebrating their anniversary, and their trust in me felt like a fresh start. I built a small team, drew on every ounce of my experience, and poured myself into every project. Floral arches, curated menus, lighting that breathed life into the room. Within months, Lane Events was thriving, booked solid for corporate retreats and charity galas. When the Knoxville News featured me in an article calling my work polished and heartfelt, I smiled to myself. Every success, every glowing review, was proof of one truth. I was never just the family's errand girl. I was the woman who built something beautiful out of her own strength. I was more than just the family's errand runner. Meanwhile, Stacy, George, and Elizabeth were still reeling from the wedding's fallout. Beatrice, ever the family truth-teller, filled me in over a coffee catch-up. The botched wedding had cost them more than money. George's reputation as the perfect host had taken a hit. Friends and colleagues stopped inviting him to gatherings, whispering about the disaster behind his back. Elizabeth's social circle, usually alive with gossip, grew uncomfortably quiet around her. They'd shelled out over $3,000 for last-minute catering, but the real damage ran deeper. Beatrice said they'd even borrowed money to cover the cost, leaving their finances strained. "They're still licking their wounds," she told me, stirring her latte. But they brought it on themselves. Matthew, my cousin, had pulled away too. After his argument with George at the wedding, he stopped showing up to family dinners altogether. Beatrice mentioned he'd called her, venting about how George tried blaming everyone except himself. "He's done with them too," she said. Their growing isolation stood in stark contrast to my new direction. I wasn't gloating, but there was a quiet sense of vindication. Their plan to use me had backfired spectacularly, leaving them to deal with the consequences, financial, social, and personal. The lesson hit me hard. Self-respect has to come first. For years, I'd let Stacy, George, and Elizabeth take advantage of me, thinking it was my duty as family. I'd planned their parties, solved their problems, and swallowed my resentment just to keep the peace. But being family doesn't mean being a doormat. Their lack of respect had cost them dearly, not just the money, but the trust of relatives like Beatrice and Matthew, and the respect of their community. I learned that saying no, setting boundaries, wasn't selfish. It was survival. Their actions, their assumptions that I'd always carry their burdens, led straight to their downfall. A ruined wedding, empty wallets, and fractured relationships. I didn't need their approval to thrive. Lane Events was proof of that. My days were filled with client meetings, venue tours, and late-night brainstorming sessions. I'd built something that was mine, something they couldn't control or diminish. Beatrice's support, Matthew's courage to speak out, even Pamela's texts from that chaotic wedding day, they reminded me that I wasn't alone. There were people who saw my worth without expecting me to bend over backward for nothing. And that was enough. As I sat in my office reviewing contracts for an upcoming spring festival, a deep clarity settled in. Cutting off Stacy, George, and Elizabeth hadn't been about revenge. It was about freedom. I wasn't waiting for their apologies or hoping they'd change. I'd simply stopped carrying their weight. My life was moving forward, and for the first time, I was building it entirely on my terms. Thank you for staying with my story. If you've ever had to stand up for yourself, share your experience in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell for more real-life drama.